What happens when Hollywood's quiet gentleman finally loses his cool? Live on national television. The answer came in the most unexpected place, an episode of The View. The air was supposed to be light. Chris Pine, the ever-composed, soft-spoken actor known for his charm and diplomacy, had come to promote his latest film, a humanitarian-themed drama that had already been praised for its emotional depth. But no one in the studio audience, or watching at home, could have guessed what was about to unfold between him and Sunny Hostin. This isn't just another talk show spat. This was something raw, real, and shockingly human. The cameras rolled. Joy Behar, ever the ringleader, leaned forward with that signature grin. "So, Chris," she began, "you're starring in this new movie about forgiveness and truth. That's pretty heavy stuff. Tell us, are you that kind of guy in real life? You know, calm, centered, forgiving?" Chris chuckled softly, brushing back his hair. "I try to be," he said. "But I'm human. We all are. That's what the movie's about. How people handle being misunderstood." For a moment, everything seemed ordinary. Polite laughter. A nod from Sarah Haynes. But then Sunny Hostin, her tone measured yet cutting, chimed in. "Speaking of misunderstandings," she said, "you've been pretty quiet about a certain viral video from the Venice Film Festival last year. The one where fans thought Harry Styles, well, spat on you. You called it ridiculous, but don't you think staying silent for so long kind of let people believe it?" The audience gave a low, collective murmur. Chris blinked, surprised, the easy smile fading from his lips. "I didn't think it was worth responding to," he said carefully. "It was nonsense. Sometimes ignoring drama is the best way to kill it." Sunny didn't back down. "But don't celebrities owe it to their fans to clear things up? When millions of people think something happened, isn't it your responsibility to?" Joy cut in lightly. "Oh, come on, Sunny, you really want to dig up that old rumor?" But the tension was there now, thick and pulsing beneath the bright stage lights. Chris's voice dropped a tone, steady but sharp. "With respect, Sunny, I don't think I owe the internet an explanation for a made-up story. I've got better things to focus on than gossip." That's when Sunny leaned forward, her expression cool, almost prosecutorial. "But don't you think ignoring it made you seem arrogant? Like you were above addressing your fans?" You could hear the audience shift in their seats. A few whispered. Some gasped. Chris's jaw tensed. His publicist, visible just off camera, started fidgeting nervously. "Arrogant," Chris repeated softly. "That's interesting. I've been called a lot of things, but arrogant isn't usually one of them." "Perception matters," Sunny pressed. "And when you choose silence, people fill in the blanks." The set was silent. Even Joy, usually eager to interrupt, glanced between them like she wasn't sure what to do. Chris leaned forward now, his eyes locked on Sunny. "With all due respect, I think the world has enough noise. Every day we're pushed to comment, to react, to perform. Maybe sometimes silence isn't arrogance, maybe it's sanity." The audience clapped, unsure if they were supporting him or just breaking the tension. Sunny smiled tightly, unbothered. "That's fair," she said. "But some would argue that staying silent when people talk about you gives them permission to define your story." Chris sighed, his patience thinning. "Or maybe," he said, "it's letting them reveal more about themselves than about me." For a moment, no one spoke. The lights seemed hotter. The audience held its breath. Sarah tried to change the subject, her voice light. "Okay, let's shift gears, Chris, your film." But Sunny wasn't done. "It's just interesting," she added, "that an actor who plays a man of principle on screen doesn't want to talk about accountability off screen." And that was the spark. Chris looked at her, really looked, and something shifted. His calm exterior cracked just slightly, revealing the flash of frustration he'd been holding back. "Are you suggesting I'm not accountable because I don't chase down rumors?" "I'm saying people notice when you pick and choose what to address," Sunny said. "It's part of being in the public eye." The camera caught his jaw tightening again. "And maybe it's part of being in the media," he shot back, "to decide what's actually worth people's attention, or what's just stirring the pot." A collective "oh" rippled through the audience. Joy gave a nervous laugh. All right, I think we've got a full pot already," she said, trying to diffuse the moment. But neither of them broke eye contact. Sunny leaned back, unfazed, a small smile playing on her lips. "You seem a little defensive, Chris." He chuckled once, low, not amused. "No, just tired of being psychoanalyzed for sport." The air felt electric. Whoopi Goldberg, sitting quietly until now, finally sighed and muttered, "Oh Lord, here we go again." The audience laughed awkwardly. But beneath that laughter, everyone could feel it. Something real had broken through the polished talk show surface. Chris Pine, the man known for poise and restraint, had just been pushed right to the edge, and Sunny Hostin, confident and relentless, seemed perfectly willing to push further. What would happen next? Would Chris walk away? Would producers cut to commercial before it exploded? Because what unfolded next, when the cameras kept rolling, would leave the entire panel speechless and social media in flames. The audience returned from the commercial break unsure of what to expect. The chatter had been hushed uneasy. When the cameras came back on, the usual warmth of the view was replaced by an awkward tension you could almost see, a weight in the air that hadn't lifted since before the break. Chris Pine sat with his hands clasped together, his gaze fixed somewhere between calm and storm. Sunny Hostin, poised as ever, glanced briefly at him, then at her notes. Joy Behar tried to break the ice. All right, welcome back. We're here with Chris Pine, who's starring in a powerful new film about forgiveness, and, well, clearly we've been having a very honest conversation about it. The audience chuckled lightly, grateful for the release. Chris smiled politely, but his jaw stayed tight. Honest is one word for it, he said. Joy laughed, though there was an edge in it. Hey, that's what we do here, honest talk. Sunny added smoothly. It's important to have conversations about how public figures handle scrutiny. People look up to you, Chris. They see how you respond. Chris turned toward her, the polite smile fading completely now. And what do they see, Sunny? He asked. Sunny tilted her head. They see someone who seems frustrated by fair questions. The audience murmured, feeling the heat rise again. Chris leaned in slightly, his voice measured. Frustrated, yes, but not by the questions. By the assumption behind them. Sunny blinked. Which assumption? The one that says silence equals guilt, Chris replied. That if I don't feed a rumor, it must be true. That's the world we've built. One where truth matters less than reaction time. A hush fell over the studio. Even Whoopi, usually unbothered, looked up with curiosity. Sunny didn't break eye contact. But don't you think, being in your position, you have to engage with the public? They're the reason you have this platform. Chris shook his head. No, I have this platform because of my work, not because of my participation in internet noise. There's a difference. The crowd reacted, half applause, half silence. Sunny smiled faintly, almost too calm. But you can't separate the two anymore. The world's changed. Social media, Chris interrupted, is the problem. It's made everyone feel entitled to everyone else's thoughts, emotions, apologies, and breakdowns. I'm not going to perform vulnerability because someone demands it. The tone of his voice made the studio go still. You could hear a pin drop. Sarah Haynes tried to interject, her tone soft. I think what Sunny's saying is. But Sunny lifted a hand gently. It's okay, Sarah. Chris has every right to feel that way. Then she turned back to him. But don't you think your fans deserve authenticity? Chris's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in disbelief. Authenticity doesn't mean putting your soul on display for public approval. It means being consistent. I said nothing because there was nothing to say. That is authentic. Applause erupted, louder this time. Some audience members even whistled. But Sunny kept her composure. So silence is your version of authenticity? She asked. Chris's voice dropped lower. When the truth doesn't need defending, yes. The words hit like a thunderclap. Whoopi finally spoke up, her voice heavy. You know, it's funny, she said. I've been in this business a long time, and sometimes the quietest people are the ones carrying the biggest truths. The audience applauded again, sensing her subtle attempt to cool things down. But Sunny wasn't finished. That's a nice sentiment, she said. But when you're part of the cultural conversation, silence is a statement, whether you like it or not. Chris let out a quiet, disbelieving laugh. That's exactly the problem. Everyone thinks they know what silence means. They don't. They just project what they want onto it. Sunny smiled thinly. So, we're the problem? Chris looked her straight in the eye. Sometimes, yes. Not just you. The whole system that rewards outrage over understanding. A murmur rippled through the audience. This wasn't banter anymore. This was confrontation, calm, intelligent, but razor-sharp. Joy looked from one to the other, searching for an escape hatch. All right, she said, clapping her hands. Let's talk about your movie before we all end up in therapy. Laughter broke the tension for a moment, but it didn't last. Chris leaned back, still watching Sunny, his fingers tapping the armrest. You know, he said softly, it's strange. I came here to talk about forgiveness, but it feels like we're having a conversation about judgment. Sunny replied gently, They're not that different. Chris smiled, but his eyes were weary. No, they're not. But one of them comes from compassion. The other comes from control. The audience erupted again, this time with full applause. Whoopi nodded slowly, a small smirk forming. Well, ain't that the truth? Joy, sensing it was time to pivot, said quickly. All right, we're going to play a little clip from Chris's new film. But the control room didn't cut right away. The camera lingered, just long enough to catch Chris and Sunny still locked in that quiet, unspoken standoff. Two people who had said more in looks than in words. The film clip rolled, but the energy in the room didn't shift. Everyone felt it, that invisible current of unresolved tension, the sense that something deeper had been exposed. And though the segment was meant to move on, neither of them truly did. What happened after the show, when the cameras stopped rolling, would only make things worse. When the cameras finally stopped rolling, the tension didn't. The applause ended, but the silence that followed was heavier than before. Crew members moved around the set, pretending not to notice what everyone could feel. The strange static that lingered between Chris Pine and Sunny Hostin. Chris stood up first. He smiled politely at Joy and Sarah, shook a producer's hand, and thanked Whoopi for the interview. But when his eyes landed on Sunny, the smile faded. She was still seated, scrolling through her notes as if nothing had happened. Good segment, she said without looking up. Chris paused, his voice calm but low. That's what you call it. She met his gaze. It was honest. He tilted his head. It was provocative. Sunny shrugged lightly. That's my job. Chris took a slow breath, the kind of breath people take when they're trying to hold back something sharper. Your job, he said, is to ask questions, not to twist them into accusations. Her expression didn't change. If it hit a nerve, maybe that says something. A few crew members froze mid-step. You could feel everyone's eyes flicking toward them, pretending not to watch but hanging on every word. Chris stepped closer, keeping his voice even. I've done 100 interviews, Sunny. You're the first one who made me feel like I walked into a cross-examination. Sunny looked up at him, unflinching. Maybe that's because I don't hand out rehearsed questions. Or maybe, he said, leaning in slightly, you mistake confrontation for truth. That line landed hard. Sunny's eyes flickered, but she didn't move. Truth makes people uncomfortable, she said softly. Especially the ones avoiding it. Chris's expression hardened. And ego makes people self-righteous. Especially the ones confusing it for integrity. The air in the studio was electric again. A stage manager whispered, we're clearing the floor, guys, but neither of them heard. Whoopi finally stepped in, moving between them. All right, let's all breathe. This ain't CNN after midnight. Chris looked at Whoopi, then back at Sunny. I don't mind questions, he said, but when they come loaded with assumptions, it's not conversation anymore. It's theater. Sunny replied smoothly, you're an actor, Chris. You should be comfortable with theater. That was the moment the smile finally disappeared from his face. His calmness turned to steel. Actors use scripts, he said, to tell the truth through fiction. You're using truth to create fiction. That's worse. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sunny blinked slowly, holding her composure, but her silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. Chris didn't wait for a reply. He turned to leave, but Whoopi caught his arm gently. Hey, she said, her tone softer now. Don't let this mess stick to you. People twist things all the time. He nodded once, exhaling. I'm used to it. Just didn't expect it here. As he walked off, the audience members who had stayed behind whispered to one another. Some looked stunned. Others smiled in disbelief, as though they'd just seen something forbidden. The kind of real moment that daytime TV usually hides behind laughter and cue cards. Sunny gathered her papers, calm on the outside, but her fingers trembled slightly as she stacked them. Whoopi glanced at her and sighed. You got what you wanted, she said quietly. But was it worth it? Sunny didn't respond. She simply looked toward the studio doors where Chris had exited, her reflection caught in the black surface of the teleprompter. Later that evening, social media exploded. Clips of the exchange flooded timelines. Viewers replayed the tension, the looks, the words. Some sided with Sunny, praising her for holding a celebrity accountable. Others called her disrespectful, accusing her of ambushing a guest for viral drama. Hashtags started trending. Hashtag Chris Pine on The View. Hashtag Sunny versus Chris. Hashtag talk show tension. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds of opinion. Chris was right. Not everything needs to be explained. She was just doing her job. It's The View, not a movie set. He handled it with class. She exposed his arrogance. The arguments spread across platforms like wildfire. Entertainment blogs posted freeze frames of the moment his expression changed. Late-night hosts hinted at it in their monologues. Even fellow actors chimed in online, defending him. Chris himself stayed silent again. No tweet, no statement, not even a public appearance for days. And in a strange way, that silence said more than any interview could. But Sunny, ever unshaken, addressed it during the next morning's show. Her tone was measured, her face composed. Yesterday's discussion with Chris Pine, she began, got more passionate than I expected. But here on this table, we believe in hard conversations. Sometimes they get uncomfortable. That's how truth comes out. The audience applauded, but not everyone in the studio smiled. Whoopi kept her arms folded. Joy just shook her head. Sarah offered a polite nod and moved on to the next topic. Behind the cameras, producers whispered about whether they'd need to reach out to Pine's team with an apology, or at least a statement to smooth things over. But Chris never called back. And as the show rolled on like nothing had happened, one truth lingered in the air. Some conversations don't end when the cameras stop. They echo quietly, in the spaces between silence and pride. No one knew it yet, but this moment, this single clash between two composed professionals, would follow both of them far longer than either imagined. By the next sunrise, the world had already chosen sides. Clips of Chris Pine and Sunny Hostin's confrontation dominated every social feed. TikTok loops of his final line, "You're using truth to create fiction," were stitched, remixed, slowed down, and captioned with everything from fire emojis to bold letters that read, "He said what we were all thinking." Entertainment headlines screamed across screens. Chris Pine walks out on The View, what really happened behind the scenes. Sunny Hostin crosses the line? The View's most explosive moment yet. Talk shows, gossip podcasts, and YouTube commentators all jumped on the story, dissecting every second. Some played it as comedy, others as cultural commentary. A few even called it the breaking point of celebrity patience. Inside ABC, executives scrambled. Emails flew back and forth. Phrases like PR containment, clarify narrative, and respectful disagreement appeared in subject lines. But the truth was, no one could control the wildfire. Chris Pine, meanwhile, kept his silence. For 5 days, not a single word left his mouth publicly. Fans flooded his social media with messages, half begging him to respond, half praising him for his restraint. He was photographed once, stepping out of a Los Angeles coffee shop, wearing sunglasses and a plain white shirt. The photo went viral because of his expression, calm, distant, unreadable. Chris Pine is in his peace era, one fan posted. Unbothered king. Sunny Hostin, however, had no such peace. The next episode of The View opened to roaring applause, but it was uneasy applause. You could feel the tension as soon as the theme song faded. Whoopi introduced the day's topics, but the audience was waiting for it. The elephant in the room. Midway through the show, Sunny took a deep breath. "Let's just address the obvious," she said. "There's been a lot of talk about my interview with Chris Pine. I respect him. I respect all my guests. My questions come from a place of curiosity, not hostility." Joy raised an eyebrow. Curiosity can still sting, though. Sarah jumped in, trying to lighten the tone. I mean, it was like watching an action scene in slow motion. We all felt that energy. Sunny smiled politely, but there was tension behind it. Maybe people just aren't used to men being challenged on emotional topics. That's what made it uncomfortable. The audience clapped, hesitant, scattered applause that didn't quite fill the room. Whoopi gave her a look that said everything words couldn't. Or maybe, Whoopi said slowly, it wasn't about gender at all. Maybe it was just two people having a bad day on live TV. Sunny nodded, but she knew what Whoopi meant. Meanwhile, in Hollywood circles, the fallout was growing. Directors, actors, and journalists whispered about it at events. Chris Pine's friends were reportedly furious. One insider claimed he felt ambushed, that the show had set him up for drama. Another said he was reconsidering ever doing daytime interviews again. But there was another twist. Fans who had never watched The View before began tuning in, hoping for another viral confrontation. Ratings spiked. Clips from the argument continued circulating, amassing millions of views. And then came Chris's response, quiet but devastating. A week later, at a film festival Q&A, a journalist cautiously asked about the View incident. Chris smiled faintly. "You know," he said, his tone even but sharp, "sometimes you walk into a place thinking it's a conversation, and you realize it's a performance. I just decided not to play along. The crowd laughed, applauded, even cheered. His comment trended within minutes. Back in the View studio, Sunny saw the clip before they went live. She didn't say anything, but the look on her face told the story. Irritation mixed with something else, a sliver of regret. During the commercial break, Whoopi leaned in and said quietly, "You can't fight perception, Sunny. Once the audience decides who's right, it doesn't matter what really happened." Sunny exhaled. "I didn't mean to start a war." Whoopi gave her a small smile. "You didn't start it. You just forgot where the cameras were pointing." That night, commentators began calling it the View showdown heard around the internet. It wasn't just about two personalities anymore. It had become a symbol of something bigger. People debated it as a reflection of modern media, celebrity privacy, and the line between honesty and hostility. For Chris, the moment transformed him from just another Hollywood actor into a reluctant folk hero for authenticity. For Sunny, it became a reminder that even truth, when delivered without empathy, can sound like a weapon. In the weeks that followed, The View moved on, as it always does. New guests, new debates, new controversies. But the clip, that minute-long confrontation, remained online, replayed millions of times, frozen in time like a spark that never quite burned out. And somewhere out there, both Chris and Sunny knew that no matter what else they did, their names would always be linked to that day. A clash not just between people, but between two versions of truth. Because in the world of live television, nothing disappears. Every word, every look, every flicker of emotion becomes part of the story forever. And that's the story that still has people talking. What do you think? Was Chris Pine right to call her out, or was Sunny Hostin simply doing her job? Share your thoughts below. We read every comment. And if you love dramatic, real celebrity moments like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Talk Narrative for more shocking confrontations and stories that keep you on the edge of your seat.